On today's show, we have part 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking about all things preseason for the Atlanta Hawks. We'll have all of that and much more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1561 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday, and this is actually going to be part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis of ATL and 29 and Peachtree Hoops. So if you missed anything from part 1, I encourage you to start at the top, which should be available in your podcast feed of choice, whether it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, etc. Make it your first listen, of course, each and every day on those platforms and subscribe to the podcast. But particularly in this case, part 1 is available at the same time as part 2. So start there if you are looking for the entire picture. With all that said, we'll dive in right now with myself and Glenn for the rest of the conversation. Coming to you now, part 2. In typical fashion for you and I, let's go to the defense. I want to know what you're looking for, because that is, to everyone's credit, I would say at Media Day and even behind the scenes before that, they've all acknowledged, tacitly or otherwise, that like they got to get better defensively. And that's, the offense is a more sexy thing to talk about. They could be incredible offensively. We all kind of know that. But to a man, even guys who are not great individual defenders, they acknowledge publicly, like, they got to be better defensively. And DeJounte said it even, I think on the radio, I think I heard this in 92.9 The Game. DeJounte said, I personally have to be better defensively. And I was like, yes, you do, DeJounte. That's correct. But it's so all the caveats apply. It's preseason, almost more on defense, because like you're not playing against offenses all the time, and defenses are maybe ahead of offenses this time of year kind of thing. But what's on your radar defensively other than just like personnel stuff?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it starts with who's defending the other team's primaries, right? Is like, are we back to seeing Jalen do that? Like, is DeJounte was been pretty rough. You know, it was pretty rough at it last year. And then you just don't have like the decent amount of options. Like I can't imagine Trent Forrest is going to play in the second unit every game this year, right? You know,
he's their best. I mean, it's funny. Like I said to somebody the other day, and they kind of got mad at me, and I was like, look, Trent, if you're saying who's the best player on this team to defend a point guard size player, the answer is Trent Forrest. Now,
absolutely.
But that's not like
people want you to say People want you to say Jalen, right?
And I get it. Look, and Jalen might be, he might be there
by the end of the year.
No, and that's, again, you and I don't want to speak for you, but I think I'm right about this. Very high on Jalen's talent. Very high on Jalen's talent. It's just, I think there is a little bit too much all summer, and this is still the case now, of like the assumption that Jalen is like an all defensive guy right now on the perimeter. It's like just like plug and play Jalen on the perimeter. And I maybe he's going to do that. I don't know. But something I keep raising my hand about this, and I'm sure I'm annoying people about it, is their, general perimeter defense is too broad of a phrase, but you mentioned Murray. Hunter is a huge X factor. But other than Hunter and Jalen, maybe they just don't have the horses on the perimeter, and the guys who are going to play. It's not like you can not play the guys I'm talking about. Like it's Trey, it's Bogey, it's DeJounte, it's AJ. Right. Like these are your good players. So they're not going to stop playing them, but like you have to have an answer somewhere defensively.
Yeah. You do, and this is where an NBA coach would probably say, that the non-coaches or the average fan or whatever, like undervalues team defense, right?
Oh, definitely.
Team defense. I mean, a lot of coaches would say team defense is the number one factor, in terms of how successful you're going to be as team defense, right? And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I still think you need, like in every other sport in the history of sports, you still need defensive talent. Mm-hmm. Right, defensive talent still matters. That's the center of like what you build your kind of whole approach around. And the Hawks, don't that's not, the Hawks don't have that at a place like where you'd ideally want to have that, right? No. At this point in time, right? I mean, that's why, like I the whole offseason, I was like, is Clint going to be back? I don't know. It seems like they're willing to make a move there, or, and Onyeka for sure deserves an opportunity to kind of show what he can do as a starter. He's ready, he's ready. And that all of those kind of rhythms we went through the whole offseason.
Sure.
But, with them kind of bringing back largely the same kind of contingent, right? And that's just, now without JC as a great organizer and help defender and awesome team defender. right? And those sorts of things. That now it's even kind of harder. But thank God they have like both Clint and Yeka right now, right? Kind of starting there. But I mean, and you and I talked when we did the Jalen capsule, like I talked about the fact that I'm tired of seeing these big kind of combo forwards or big wings going over 1 million screens and like coming up with lower body injuries. We saw that with Kawhi. We talked about Kawhi, Danny Green, on and on and on and on, right? And the idea that like I feel like when some fans are like, oh, Jalen will be our kind of wing stopper. I'm like, don't sign me up for that. Like, some of that, sure, right? Jalen has grown a ton as a team and help defender. He's super disruptive when he's one man away from the ball, right? He's really great at his good timing and feel and that phase and all that sort of stuff. So I'm more like, and it's funny, Hunter at this point, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, is he better as a team? And Hunter is a great organizer, a great communicator. He's awesome on the weak side, helping the strong side kind of understand the best way to kind of approach things and then organizing the help on the weak side. Hunter is fantastic at that. He's grown so much at that. And but again, like what Quinn has is like Bogey's a good team defender, right? Bogey will make some weird decisions sometimes in terms of helping too early on, a big man kind of rolling to the rim and things like that. But I think if you ask the coach, like, if the coach is like, at least give me like a set of good team defenders, and then we'll kind of go from there and kind of figure it out. But I mean, definitely the Hawks do not have kind of the talent you'd ideally want to have at the point of attack. But there's a lot you can cover with like good, sound team defense. It's a little disheartening that they're potentially their most naturally talented guys are their bigger forwards, right? Which is, again, I don't want to see that across like a whole bunch of screens. So like how much switching are they going to do? We saw during the Lloyd Pierce era, a lot of 1-3-4 switching, a lot of what they call the red base switching. And then Nate took them a little bit to more kind of traditional. Then last year they got into more switching because I think because they had to, right?
Yeah.
They were so bad at the point of attack. It is going to be interesting to see like, who does he have? Like, is DeJounte going to take the other guys like primary guard? That did not go well last year, right? Nope. And DeJounte has owned up to that and to a degree in terms of talking about it in the way that he can. And so that's going to be fast to me, like really, really fascinating to see. And then just which forwards play together. That matters so much on defense. Like I said earlier, Bogey and Bay play together. Who's doing what, right? If AJ's if they're going to play a guard heavy lineups and AJ's kind of at the 3, what is he doing? What does that look like? When Hunter and Jalen are on together, potentially, right? What does that look like? Who's doing what? That stuff, I know it's like really in the minutia, but
but it matters.
Eager to see that defensive role kind of organization and what that leads us to kind of start to be able to say, I think this is what we're going to see at the beginning of the regular season.
Today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs is fantastic, bringing fit, comfort, and versatility to the table with all of their products, and I feel fantastic when I wear my Birddogs gear, also comfortable in my own skin when it is on me. And also, Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are the best. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give that sculpted look that you're always seeking. They fit much better than regular shorts. They have to be made of that stiff, restricting cotton that you might be familiar with. Birddogs also fixes that issue by having their own cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but also happens to stretch, give you a slimmer fit without having to actually sacrifice anything with regard to your movements. They also utilize anti-sweat wicking fabric to keep you cool and dry all day long. Birddogs are functional for any occasion, whether it's a date or playing golf, going out, working out, or even just hanging out. In the end, the folks at Birddogs make awesome products, and you're going to want to check them out, all of them, in one place right now at birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Enter the promo code LockedOnNBA as well at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You will not want to take your Birddogs off. We absolutely promise you. I think there's a lot there because, the whole we done this before, but the whole defense is all about effort thing is, it's not really true at the NBA level. You have to execute and you have to have talent, and effort's the bare minimum is the way that even Nate said it that way. And this is the kind of you kind of have to have that, and it's true. Like you have to have that, but if you don't have it, it's like okay. But one of the trickier things about this team, and I'm trying not to frame it negatively all the time, and I'm cognizant of that, is some of the lineup combinations defensively, because there is a baseline where I'm not saying it's impossible to form defenses that are decent enough with some of these combinations, but it would be a challenge with some of these combinations. If you're going to play, just to go the most extreme example, if you're going to play Trey, Bogey, and Sadiq Bey together, you're going to have some problems defensively. It's just the way it is, personnel wise. You're just going to have problems. Now you're going to be incredible on offense, so that's maybe there's a trade off there, obviously. But you're not to bring it all back to Hunter all the time, but there's a reason I keep saying when I'm asked by national outlets to do these Hawks previews, it's like the least sexy answer in the world. But I'm like, the pivot guy on this team is DeAndre Hunter. And that's like, it's kind of a scary thought, but they just need what he's supposed to be able to do. And I say that intentionally that way, what he's supposed to be able to do. They need it so badly because of what you said about Jalen, both role wise and just kind of asking him to do all that stuff. And also on offense, he's always been a 4 on offense in the NBA. He might do more perimeter stuff now, but like he's to this point been a 4 on offense.
Yeah. And with Jalen, it's like sometimes I feel like folks are maybe not recalling or not appreciating. Like, okay, if you get him, let's say you have him defending a point guard or a 2 or 3, that is a primary. Like one of Jalen's most valuable skills is the ability to grab a rebound and go. The further you get him from the paint, the less of that stuff you're going to get.
He's also a rebounder, period. Like, especially if you're playing him with Onyeka, which is what's going to happen most of the time. Like, you need that.
Right. So those things have to be kind of taken into consideration. Like, you want to generate points in transition. It seems like Jalen's probably the best transition player right now, right? From a ability to push the ball, pass. I mean, his decision making is really impressive for a guy on experience he has. And so sometimes I feel like the converse on the other end is like, oh, I want Onyeka to take 100 threes this year, right? Or 50 threes or whatever we're going to throw out there. It's like, okay, but you have to understand that you're taking him away from the things he does best to kind of help him develop that. Do I want Onyeka to be able to kind of make a corner 3 and kind of, function over there and what that generates, right? That's great. That doesn't mean I want him taking 100 of those this year. Right?
Well,
because then you're steering him. You're steering him away from a primary skill to a secondary, if not a tertiary skill. And that's not how you drive for your top level success. You want to add it to the things he can do? Awesome. Right?
Right.
You want to leverage that? Awesome. Right. But to suddenly treat that like it's a primary skill is not the approach I think most NBA coaches are going to take.
Yeah. And that's one of the talking points about the famed Onyeka Clint lineup is like, if you do that, you have to have Onyeka stand out there. He has to stand out there because Clint's on the court. And look, some of the framing around Clint, not to do it all again. You and I are high on Clint. I get that. But, some of the fit stuff with Clint's interesting too, because if you like Jalen, who is everybody's breakout player in a lot of ways, there's a reason Jalen and Clint have not played very much together. They don't really fit well together. They just don't, because Jalen's not a great shooter. And he's kind of already a weird fit in half-court offense, and they've acknowledged that. I don't know if he has, but the team has. Like, they kind of know, like, Jalen's kind of clunky in half-court offense. And you throw Clint out there with him. There's a reason why Onyeka and Jalen play a lot together. It's because they're complementary of each other, and Jalen and Clint are not. And that's probably the reason that when I am asked at this early juncture to give my projection for starting power forward, I keep saying Sadiq. I'm not convinced about that. If you told me Jalen starts opening night, I'm not going to be shocked or surprised. But the main reason I think it's Sadiq by a nose is because of the fit with Clint. And I think Clint's going to start because if he's going to start until he's not. And I'll be shocked if he doesn't start. So
I'm with you there. I think Bay's the starter. I think
it's combinations. Back to your point. It's all about who plays well together.
Trey and Sadiq were so good to go to court together last year.
And Trey and Clint are so good together. And that's the same. Right. That's the other thing. Trey and Clint fit perfectly together. They just do.
Right. And then like when you get say Jalen's at the 4 and Onyeka's at the 5, like the ball handling and passing that they collectively present at those positions is pretty unique, right? And now you have to get into the actions that leverage that, open that up, and things like that. But there's a lot of stress that they could kind of present together in that way too. You probably want that with Bogey and AJ or something like that.
And it also helps DeJounte. And also on the second unit in particular, where they've used that lineup a lot, you don't usually see a ton of Trey, Jalen, Onyeka. It's usually those guys with DeJounte. And that helps DeJounte in theory to have a little bit more malleability, a little bit more ball handling. You don't have to have, because DeJounte can play the every down point guard role, but he's not Trey. in that way.
Right.
So like, there's a reason that that's been a combination. I know that a lot of that was Nate that did it last year, but Quinn did not change that. Quinn's still paired, and I have the data somewhere to talk about it. He's still almost exclusively paired Jalen and Onyeka together. Jalen played more when Quinn took over, but it was with Okongwu, and that's purposeful, I think. So, and same thing, like Bogey's an interesting pivot piece. So is Hunter in a different way. But I think keeping kind of, again, those combinations of like Bay with Capella to also give the space, because Capella's not a spacer. And to have your life easier if you're Trae Young, or even if you're DeJounte, but especially if you're Trae, if you're going to play Trae with Clint, having 3 shooters, like real shooters, and that's not a shot at Jalen, but at this moment is not really a guy who gets guarded out there in the same way. Bay is a fire alarm. Like Bay and Bogey are guys that defenses are terrified of as shooters. So it's all, again, I'm not trying to like relitigate all of it. It's just interesting because you brought up the combinations. And preseason is a good time to experiment. So like to bring it back to that conversation, maybe you go out of the box more. Maybe you try Clint with Jalen more. Maybe you try stuff that you don't want to see because you can do it now and it won't bite you. And that's kind of, again, the nuance of like not overreacting to this stuff, because if they come out in the first preseason game and they played a bunch of weird combinations, I might scratch my head a little bit, and then I'll probably remember, oh yeah, it's preseason.
Yeah, I know. The second quarter of the first preseason game, I want to see a Jalen and Onyeka 4-5 pick and roll right at the nail, and let's
do it. Absolutely, like that's exciting. Even though like I know that's a Hawks fan fever dream, but even as someone who's neutral about this stuff, like I would love to see that. I think Jalen is extremely interesting as a prospect. Like he's a fascinating player. Him and Onyeka get along great. I'm sure people have seen the video of Onyeka asking Jalen questions at the media day. Like they're like really good friends. They have chemistry together. They fit, again, perfectly together on the court in a lot of ways. Strengths and weaknesses overlapping. But yeah, I mean, I love that sicko stuff. Like give me some weirdness. Like I wouldn't mind, honestly, I would not mind. This is going to get Hawks fans really excited. I wouldn't mind let's give Jalen some reps as I refuse to say point guard, but let's give Jalen some reps as like a more primary for a while. Just give him 4 minutes where we say, hey Jalen, we're gonna have you kind of initiate some and see how that goes. It may not go well. I have no idea, but I'd like to see that. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into the action that you're looking for this NFL season or college football season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, bet $5, you get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Beyond the awesome perks of signing up right now, FanDuel is all the stuff you're looking for in the sporting space. That includes point spreads and over-unders, money lines, player props, future bets, and much more. The app at FanDuel is safe and secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes like the NFL and college football, of course. The NBA is prominent at FanDuel, MLB, WNBA, college basketball, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, and much more. And now is the best possible time to join the folks at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check out the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network and the process with an offer that you absolutely will not want to miss. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, I mean, especially, I don't think you want to give him something where there's 3 or 4 reads. Now, sure. He's super intuitive, like, and so like getting to the point where he can run an action where there's 3 or 4 reads, I totally think he could get there with the reps. The question is that the right investment for any team to kind of get Jalen to that level, right? Where any action you can run where he's creating, where you get him like the least bit downhill on his defender, it's over, right? His ability to kind of attack a defender where he has even that much leverage on him, that's what I want to see. Is like, okay, let's just get him going downhill at the rim, and kind of just really kind of stressing the interior of the opposing team's defense. That's more interesting to me. Like, I want to see that 4 or 5 pick and roll, because I think that can be dynamic with Onyeka especially, for sure. Right? But if you're like running something to kind of get him like an edge and some space to kind of attack the rim, that's what I want to see. It's interesting to think about like how aggressive you want him to be, because he's such a good passer, right? And it's just such an intuitive and natural passer. I think one of the things that they have to help him with this year is finding that right distribution between being super aggressive as a scorer, which he has a lot of raw natural talent in that area as well.
Definitely.
And then also kind of leaning on the passing. When as a young player, can I see when it looks like two defenders loading up to me, but it's really three? And when it's really three, I do this other thing, right? Whereas, no, the ball rotated to me and the defense is still on the other side of the floor, and this guy can't stop even getting past him. I'm just going to freaking go right at him,
Yeah.
It's that read and that decisiveness that I think is where, like, that's a real going to be a real determinant. And, like, what is his real offensive ceiling? It's that ability to, boom, like, okay, they're showing me, like, two bodies, but it's really three, so I'm going to do this.
Three, yeah.
Right.
No, it comes with experience, and that's one of the things. Like, he's not a plug and play player, and that's not a bad thing. He's just not. But like as he gets more and more experience with those kind of reads and his role and putting him in a position to succeed, you can kind of see it step by step. We even saw it last year. He got so much better from start to finish last year in so many different ways, as young guys do. But it's just I find him fascinating. I mean, defensively, a lot of it's individual, a lot of it's scheme. I do think that there's a general consensus or thought around the league that, like, a high-level coach like Quinn, again, not disparaging the previous regime, but like can kind of mask some of the personnel weaknesses defensively. I think the Hawks are hoping that, because look, I think if you put true serum in this front office, they would acknowledge it's not a great defensive personnel team, and they're kind of relying on the centers and the scheme to get them to an average level. I think that's probably what they're hoping for. And that's a reasonable hope. That's not crazy at all. But again, like, there are limitations there, and this is still an offense first team. I just, I'll be interested to see what kind of nuances. And I mean, honestly, it's probably stuff that you're going to notice that I'm not going to notice about, like, what Quinn is doing differently to kind of try to raise the floor of this group.
Yeah. I think on defense, like, so much of it really is just like accountability. Like, I'm the person who said on Twitter at one point, like, and so, like, I don't remember my exact word, but the Hawks try to figure out how much defense they have to play to win the game, and they don't play 1 ounce more than that, right? And that's just kind of been their brand on defense for a while. And
I keep crediting you, by the way. I keep crediting you for this, like, this consistency topic. I know that it's like a very big buzzword, but you've been saying this for 6 months at least. That, like, that was the single biggest problem with the Hawks last year was consistency. They just didn't. They couldn't find that level.
And here's the thing, right? So let's say they've been on average, like 25th on defense. I know they trended higher than that, like, especially like when they made their run, right? And then
that was the one time they were better than like 18th. Was that 3 months?
Getting from 25 to 15 is way easier than getting 15 to 5. That's accountability. That's consistency. That's consistent effort. That's talking when something's not going right. Someone taking initiative as a player and kind of getting the, hey guys, like, why are we like messing this up? Let's get this squared away, and having that kind of kind of leadership presence within the player unit. And so for me, like, getting from 25 to 15 is sort of in the more controllable areas of their play. It takes talent, like it takes a lot more talent to get from 15 to 5, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone expects that at all. But, like, if you're playing hard consistently, playing as a team, communicating, you're invested consistently on that end. And again, it's all for everything that's going to come and go some just because the season's such a grind. But I think we know when it's like, no, we kind of see this all the time, versus like, oh, they're on their, 4th game in 6 nights. And yeah, of course. Right.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But, like, I feel like that trying to get from 25 to 15, and if they're top 5 on offense and they're in the range of like league average on defense, they're going to win a lot of games.
That's a 50-win team. That's what I keep saying. That's the path to 50 wins this year is elite offense, average defense. That's all.
And I think that jump from like bottom third to middle third is mostly in the areas they control. Like, and that's what I'm kind of looking for from this team. Like, when I wrapped up with the last episode with Kevin, I was like, I think this team could get in the mix apart from Milwaukee and Boston. Like, I think Cleveland's gonna win a lot of games too. Cleveland's tough. They're tough. But, like, when it comes to like Philly's kind of a mess. And the Knicks are running it back. The Knicks, like, the precision they played with last year was really impressive. But, like, RJ Barrett's not getting better. And that's we talk about, like, not to get on the whole Knicks thing, but like DeAndre being the kind of the fork in the road for the Hawks. Like, RJ Barrett is this huge fork in the road for New York, right?
Yeah, maybe true.
And so for me, it's like Yeah, it's just like, man, just play defense all the time, or at least 80% of the time. And you're going to win 48, 49 games. And maybe if you play good offense at the end, you're going to be like, hey, we're like fourth in the East, and it's mid-March. That's I used the term in the mix. I didn't say, oh, they're going to,
you did.
Control. It's controllable. Like getting from 25 to 15 is like 80 to 90% controllable. And that's what I want to see.
I do think that maybe it's you and I who really value defense more than most do. But even with that said, there'll be a lot of attention because of who the stars are, Trey, and to a lesser extent, DeJounte, on what Quinn does offensively. But I remain, and I've said this a different way at different time, but number one, they're banking on Quinn a lot as far as like, yes, there's internal development of young guys, but Quinn is the big addition to the roster from last year. It's Quinn. And I feel like that manifests more on defense than offense. And that might sound stupid because I think there's a reputation of Quinn as this like Bud disciple, system offensive guy, all this stuff. And that's like, he could do that stuff and much more modern than Nate, all that stuff. I feel like, and for the most part in the league, other than like your D'Antoni types, coaching, like I think about coaching more on defense. Like I just do. Like as far as like structures are concerned, and again, I know I kind of cut my teeth covering Bud, so I'm that's part of this, I'm sure. But everyone would always point to Bud as this offensive genius because it was beautiful basketball, especially in the 15 season. I get all that. Bud's superpower in Atlanta and in Milwaukee was building defenses. Defenses, and yeah, Milwaukee has a lot more talent defensively. They had Giannis. They had although Brook Lopez didn't used to be a defensive talent. People have forgotten this. He used to be pretty bad defensively, but. Like, yeah, that's the difference between like Milwaukee being elite is because they had good talent and great coaching. But if you have a great coach, and I'm not saying Quinn is Bud, but Quinn is closer to Bud than what I had for the last few years. I do believe that. Like, what impact can he and the staff have? At the end of the day, the players are playing, but I do think in general, and maybe I'm nuts, that coaches at this level. A lot of their work happens at like kind of just pushing that defense up a few notches. And that's what this team needs more than anything. Because offense, I really don't worry that much. I really don't. Like there's a gap between number 2 in the league and number 7 in the league that like there's some nuance there, but there's a floor on offense that's super high. Defensively, the floor is below the floor. Like the floor is terrible defensively on this team. We've seen it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it is kind of underappreciated. Like on offense, it's really my word. If I had to choose one word, it's habits, right?
And that was a popular word at Media Day. It's habit building. There are lots of that.
So that's kind of where it is. Like on the catch, making decisions, attacking, going, sharing, moving the ball, et cetera, et cetera. On defense, it's about structure and it's about commitment to functioning as a team, communicating. And it's kind of funny because I used to kind of joke around like back a million years ago. I played like the really early versions of Madden, right? Like the video game. And it's like offense is interesting because you're calling like, defense is boring, right? And I think sometimes NBA fans are like, defense is boring.
Most of the time. That's how fans are.
Just shot blocker and, just try, and there's a lot of truth to like try hard, but it's structure. It's being invested on that end. Like when we haven't talked about Trey, like we talked about Trey, his primary job is to keep himself out of trouble and ask for help. He needs to keep himself out of a bad spot. And I thought he grew a lot in that area last year towards the end of the season, especially, but he's got to go up even another level, right? Around like recognize like, oh no, they're trying to do this to me. Like, what are we like? And engaging in, the whole kind of line support on the floor. But to me, like if they're going to be back, like trying to avoid the play-in, it's because they're 25th on defense. If they're going to be like, we're mid-March and we're within 3 games of having a home, a top 4 seed, and maybe do that, it's going to be because they were a consistent defense. And they have the shooters to kind of function around Trey. They have the defensive anchors, I think, to kind of build from. They have the young talent that you can, I think, believe in some internal development, improvement, kind of making a difference. And even if it's mostly on the margins across the whole season, the margins are important. But like that, to me, it's like, I don't want to like say, let's just fast forward to March and like kind of see how it went. But it really is going to be the defensive play is going to determine whether they're like in the mix, like I said, I think they can be, or whether like, oh man, it's March 20th and we're 7th, and there's 2 teams a half game behind us. That's what it comes down to. I think mostly. It helps, but
yeah. I mean, yes, agreed. This is the most on-brand way for you and I to end the podcast, is talking about how defense matters more than everything else does. But no, you're right. I mean, every once in a while, you get a team like last year's Kings, where like they truly were good enough on offense that nothing else mattered. Like they were historic on offense, and maybe the Hawks could do that. I'm not saying they couldn't. The more likely scenario is exactly what you lay out there. It's more like great on offense, not number 1 in the league, but great, and just like 18, even. Honestly, give me 18th defensively. Like, I don't even care. 15th is nice. Give me 18th. That'd be great. I mean, that'd be their best full season since the conference finals run. And again, they've only done it once, and it was not even full. It was for a half. They did it once for a half season, and we saw the results. And I'm not saying they're going to be a conference finalist if they do that, but like that was the gap. Yeah, they shot the heck out of the ball. Bogey was out of his mind for 3 months, but
Gallo,
it was more about the defense. It really was. Like, it got a perfect microcosm of this is that all of that buzz was about Trey and the way Bogey was shooting, all this stuff, and it was great. They played great on offense. And the sneaky thing was I think they were like 11th on defense for 3 months. And it's like, that's why you're winning, everybody. So anyway, we're off.
I know, yeah. The difference between 18 and 15 is the opponent's shots going in or not. Like, so let's get in the ballpark, right? Let's get in the ballpark there.
There's little margins over the course of 82 games.
If they're second or third on offense and they're in the range of 15 on defense, they're going to threaten 50 wins. If they're more of what they've been on defense, they're going to be trying to get themselves out of the play-in range the whole season. Yeah,
trying to get to 45 and
crystal ball. There you go, right there.
That's
you can figure out if they're going to play defense or not. You know whether to bet the over or the under. Right?
That is a very good synopsis, Glenn. All right, I'll get you out of here. It's been an hour. I appreciate all the time. One more plug before I throw it to you, Glenn and I. Glenn, more importantly, is going to be in town in Atlanta. Meet and greet Monday after the game. That'll be fun. Anything else to plug, Glenn? I know you're on a podcast regularly with our guy Kevin.
Yeah, we took a break, and Kevin's getting older, so we got to kind of build in some break time. I'm like a month older than Kevin, so I'd love to.
Kevin is getting older. That's true. It's just facts. It's just facts.
That's how biology works. That's how the calendar works, though. But I mean, don't keep in mind, Kevin will be at there too. Wes, one of my favorites.
Yes.
Wes Morton's going to be
Wes Morton's a legend.
Absolutely, and doing, I mean, the work he and the team are doing, like where I can't really contribute as much as I used to, but like helping Hawks fans get ready for the season is just like awesome work over there. Got an influx of new kind of talent doing awesome stuff. So P3 Hoops, like check that stuff out every single day. Wes and team are doing awesome over there, and I still try to support them behind the scenes. ATL 29, Kevin and I, cliffhanger of sorts last episode, or next episode is like, okay, Kevin, tell us how you really felt about this Hawks team, because he was not agreeing with or it seemed to be not agreeing with my kind of in the mix kind of description there. So check that out and find me on Twitter, and if you can make it to the October 10 game, it's this whole trip, it's kind of funny. This whole trip is built around my birthday. I'm going to spend my birthday with my daughter who lives in Chattanooga. The 10th is 2 days ahead of that. And so, if you want to kind of swing by and say hi and hello, if we interact on Twitter a lot and have a chance to kind of, have an argument in person, then let's do that. It would be a lot of fun. So hope to see as many people there as we can.
I'm pretty sure I said Monday. It's Tuesday the 10th. Monday's open practice, which is why that was in my head. I have to go down there Monday too.
People are going to send you Venmo requests for gas money when they drive down on Monday. Brad, you owe me $10 for gas.
There's a game on Monday. There's a practice on Monday, game on Tuesday. But yeah, we'll hopefully see some folks there. Thank you, Glenn, for doing this as always. I'm sure I'll bug you down the line. I try not to bug you too much, but I appreciate you always for coming on. Follow Glenn, follow the P3 Hoops crew, all that stuff as well. Subscribe to this podcast, tell a friend about the show, and we'll see you all next time.